because we know when we are not really being our true selves. And sometimes we have the opportunity to make the change. And when we have that opportunity and want to make the change, then we just need to. Hi, everyone. I'm Crystal McDaniel, and this is The Naked Singer. This is episode 12, which means we have made it through 3 months of podcasting, and I am so excited that we are on this journey together. Our podcast is growing all the time, and I thank you so much for your listenership and your support. Without it, we wouldn't still be doing this podcast, so thank you so much. This is the month of May, and in this episode, we're going to be discussing to know who you are and how important it is to know who you are. Or the man who's considered the father of voice is Giovanni Battista Lamperti, and his famous quote, "To know thyself is more important to the singer than any other profession, because to sing well, your body, your mind, and your soul must work together." It is such an important quote because that's the truth. And I see that every single time I go into the studio. I see students who struggle with knowing themselves and knowing who they are and knowing why they're doing certain things. Now, a lot of my singers are young. A lot of them are teenagers, and they're in training, and they have a gift, and they want to develop the gift. And of course, as a teenager, you're just trying to figure out your life and your body and your spirit and the things that you believe. And you're just starting out to know a little bit about who you are. But when I ask them point blank questions about what type of person they want to be, most of them don't really know. And then the adults that I have sometimes still struggle with who they are and what they know about themselves and what they believe about themselves. And that's something that I understand we have a journey in that we try to figure out for our entire lives. But after a while, you really need to start dealing with who you are, who you want to be, and go about being that. Our emotional vocabulary is very weak, and most of the time we only look at maybe 5 emotions: happy, sad, mad, frustration, and upset. And so I ask all of my students to describe how they're feeling, but they cannot use any of those 5. And at times they really struggle to figure it out until I give them a grocery list of other emotions that you can possibly have, like feeling powerless or feeling not enough or abandonment or feeling unheard. All of those are emotions too. Excitement is an emotion. And when I'm talking about emotional vocabulary, I'm talking about those things. Feeling lost is one of them. And so all of these things happen to us in our lives, and it's a part of the journey of finding out who you are and what you stand for and what you believe about yourself. Those things are really, truly important to do other things well. Just like Lamperti says, to sing well, these things have to work together. And so not knowing who you are is going to keep you pretty lost in what you are doing. I'm going to give you an example of that. For me, one of my traits that I like the most about myself is the fact that I am a very loyal person. And when I say I'm loyal, I'm not just a loyal friend and a trustworthy friend, but I'm also someone, I'm loyal to myself. I'm loyal to what I think. I'm loyal to what I believe. My loyalty, it spills over into how I deal with my husband, how I deal with my children, how I deal with the people outside of my home, how I deal with my career, how I deal with doing this podcast, because I'm loyal, I'm faithful. and I'm steadfast and I'm committed and I'm consistent. And all of those things have to do with loyalty. Most of the time, when I ask a student to tell me 3 things that they really like about themselves, they'll usually come up with a word like committed or loyal or friendly or things like that or things like that. And I ask them sometimes to look up the word. Like I had a student over the weekend to tell me that one of the words she would describe herself as and a trait that she liked about herself was that she's diligent. So she looked up the word diligent. And then I said, these are the things in that definition that you need to live out in everything you are, because if that's a trait that you like about yourself, then that's something that you need to make sure you are walking out in everything you do, which means when I go to class, I walk that out. When I deal with people, I walk that out. When I am practicing, I walk that out. In every aspect of your life, that's what you want to walk out. So, in this podcast, I want this to make you start thinking about who you are and what you believe about yourself. And instead of thinking about the negative for just a moment, I want you to sit there while you're listening, and I want you to have a pen and paper, and you can put this on pause if you want to. And I want you to write down 3 things that you like about yourself, because we all have something that we absolutely like about ourselves, whether we want to admit it or whether we don't. And then I want you to take a look at those words you're looking at, and then I want you to look them up in a dictionary, because if those are the things that you like about yourself, then those are the things you need to start walking out. Then I want you to write down a list also beside that, 5 things that you want to be, that you absolutely want to be. And then take a look at what those 5 things are, and then decide that that's who you are and start doing those things. Who you want to be is really important. Early on in my life, I've told you this before, I've had a lot of trauma, and so I acted out in a lot of different ways. And I wasn't always responsible, and I didn't always show up on time. And there were just a lot of issues that I had because of the trauma that I had in my life. And I'm just going to be honest, a lot of that trauma went on and on and on until the last 2 or 3 years. However, I had already made some decisions early on how I was going to handle that particular trauma. In some ways, I decided that I didn't want to be the person that was late. I didn't want to be the person that was irresponsible. And so I started changing those particular behaviors, because those were things that I no longer wanted in my life, because I wanted to be a person that was responsible. And I wanted to be a person that was punctual. And I wanted to be a person that was truthful. And I did not want to live in duplicity. So many times, the traumas that we have in our lives make us live 2 separate lives. We'll live one life in front of people, and then we keep all these other things secret about ourselves, the things that we don't like. And then we feel bad because we don't feel we're living in authenticity. And that's when we have a split part, 2 parts of who we are, and it makes us feel false, and it makes us feel like an imposter. And I think that we don't have to feel that way, that we can really live in authenticity, and we can really live in who we were made to be, and know who we are and continue to walk that out. Now, at the age that I am now, and with the things I've gone through, I have decided that I want to be comfortable in my own skin, comfortable with myself. Now, that when I say comfortable, that doesn't mean that I don't want to improve. I do want to continue to improve. I love to learn. And I love to research, and I love to experiment and learn new things and come up with new techniques on how to sing and how to best help students to learn vocal technique and be healthy singers. I love to do all of those things, but I I also want to make sure that I am living in the authentic person that I am. I want to make sure that if I have a need, that I'm speaking that need and not just wanting somebody to guess at what I need. I want to be able to say, you know what? I need you to say this. I need you to do this. And this is something that I have that feeds me and that helps me to be able to grow as a person. And that way I'm not holding anything in. And I'm not living in duplicity where I'm thinking in my mind, well, they should just know that. They should just, and I'm not holding somebody to some expectation that they don't even know that I have for them. And I think that that's important. Living in duplicity is never a healthy thing to do for ourselves, because we know when we are not really being our true selves. We know when we are hiding things. And for years, I hid things. I hid the fact that I didn't always do things honestly. I hid the fact that I didn't always want to do what my family wanted me to do. And I would be very secretive, and I would go out and do what I wanted to do and not let them know that's what I was doing. And I knew I was living in this double situation where some people thought that I was one way and I actually was, but then I had this other thing that I really wanted to be. And I would go by myself and do that thing. And that went on and on and on until I finally just said, Crystal, that's just not who you are. You're living dishonestly, and that is not who you are. It's not who God made you to be. So let's just quit doing those things. Just completely put it to a halt and change how you do everything. And I have to say that I didn't even really do that well, because I had a real trouble being open. I didn't want anybody to be hurt. And so a lot of times I would just do stuff and I wouldn't tell anybody I was going to do it. I would just go ahead and make a decision and make the jump and do that. And then I had to pick up the pieces later. And that wasn't necessarily the best decision that I could have made either. But some of those decisions that I made in just leaving one thing and going to another was actually the best decision that I could do, the best decision that I could make at the time in order to be able to make the change that I wanted to make in my life. And as I went along, I got better and more open and more honest about who I am. And I faced a lot of things about who I am. And now I am saying, yay, I'm at the place that I always wanted to be, but it's been quite the journey to get there. So I think that you have to honestly ask yourself, are there parts of your life that you aren't being truthful about? Are there parts of your life that you want to live openly and know that you are really authentically being you and knowing who you are? Are there Are there things that you have trouble facing? Are there boundaries that you have trouble drawing? And boundaries are very important to healthy living. I heard a really great statement the other day that boundaries enable me to love you and love me at the exact same time. And that was, let's see, Prentice Hemphill actually said that. Prentice Hemphill. She has a really great podcast too. And I just think that that's a very poignant statement. And so now I draw my boundaries so that I can love me and love you at the exact same time, because that's what I want to be able to do. So I think that when you think about yourself, I think that you need to make sure that you're going on an open and honest self journey. And in that self journey, it's going to be in how you treat your body, and it's going to be in how you treat your mind, and it's going to be in how you treat your spirit, because we need to feed our body the right things so that we can have good energy. We need to make sure that the things that we're putting into our body are the best things for us and healthy, and we don't overindulge in things that aren't going to be good for us. I think that we need to exercise, especially as singers, to make sure that our pulmonary system and our breathing is going to cooperate us when we do our job. But I think we have to do that in every aspect of our lives, because we need to keep care of the body that we have been given to function in. And so therefore we need to make sure that we do the things that help us become our best selves. I think that when we are dealing with our mind, to know yourself and to make sure to know who you are means that you know what you're thinking and you know what you're feeling, because both of those go hand in hand. Our thoughts come from where we are feeling something. And instead of just jumping to some reactionary thing, which were those top 5 that I talked about, the happy, sad, mad, frustrated, and upset, instead of just popping over there to that land, we have to understand what might be driving that reaction, because more times than not, something in our early lives made us feel lacking, made us feel incomplete, made us feel like nobody cared, or that we were lost, or there was just something that we needed emotionally that was not being fed. My daughter and I had a conversation about that just this morning. My daughter Rosemary and I did. And so I think that those are conversations that you need to have with your children. I think those are conversations that you need to have with your teenager. And I think that those are conversations you need to have with your adult child, if you have one, to understand and really see and empathize with what they are going through, so that you can know what the need is, so that you can help them, because everybody carries some sort of garbage. And we have to help one another take our garbage out. And we have to accept the fact that sometimes we cause the garbage. Sometimes we dump the garbage on them. And we have to take responsibility for that as well. So those are all things that go along with really knowing who you are. It's being willing to face the good and the bad about yourself and make a change. And make a real change. I mean, to quote Michael Jackson, I'm looking at the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to make the change. No message can be any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make the change. I think that that is a really important thought for all of us, to know who we are. And so many of us struggle with knowing who we really are and what we're really supposed to be doing with ourselves. I think that, like what our purpose is. I think that when you know who you are, it's easy to figure out what your purpose is because it sort of lights the path. Who you are will light the path, and knowing who you are will light the path because then you'll be living in authenticity, and it really is the way to let your light shine. And when that light is shining, you can see the path that you are supposed to be walking. It is so much more important to know who you are than it is to figure out what you're going to do with yourself. And I said this in the last podcast that, most of our lives, we ask the children, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? And when we're thinking about that, it's like not who you want to be, but what do you want to be? Do you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant? Do you want to be a football player? What do you want to be? Instead of saying, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What type of person? Who do you like being? What do you like about yourself? What do you think about that? And so we're not really developing people that understand who they are or even being encouraged to be who they are. And that's really missing within ourselves. And so as we get older, suddenly we start thinking, well, who am I? I don't really know me. And we just walk around lost. And then we think, you know what? I'm doing this job and I don't know why I'm doing this job because I don't really like it and it doesn't really fit. And I don't feel like I fit in here. And part of that is because you're not sure who you are and you would rather be something else. And it is okay to change your career. It is okay to walk away from that and do something else. Most of us just think that we have to just put our head down and slide. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes we do. And sometimes we have the opportunity to make the change. And when we have that opportunity and want to make the change, then we just need to. You are not stuck, and it doesn't matter what age you are at, you are not stuck. And you don't have to live in misery doing something that doesn't really fit you. Is that sort of like wearing shoes that are too big or too tight? If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. And we need to go about just living out who we are. I used to wonder, what in the world was Shakespeare saying when he said, "To thine own self be true"? And it took me years to really understand that statement. Now, it might be obvious to you, but for somebody that's gone through real severe trauma, it's not always obvious. And then one day it just completely dawned on me. I'm supposed to tell myself the truth. I'm supposed to be honest with myself. And before I'm honest with anybody else, at least be honest and truthful and live out my truth myself and live out that. And that's who I am really meant to be. And that's the type of person that I want to live out, which has nothing to do with what I do. Although the things that I do have everything to do with who I am. So it's actually the opposite. I am not what I do, but what I do is who I am. And I like that. That is an awesome feeling to know that I'm living authentically. And I think everyone around me needs to be able to live authentically and to know who they are. That's something that I genuinely want my children to know who they are and to live that out. And I have to accept that whoever they are is totally fine. Maybe it wasn't my dream for them. Because you always have these dreams for your children when you're pregnant and when you're carrying them, and you think, oh, when they grow up, I hope it's this way and I hope it's that way and I hope they turn out this way. And you just have all these dreams for your children. And in the end, sometimes they turn out being completely different than you think they're going to. And in the end, you have to decide, are you going to accept them for who they are because they are a part of you and you love them? Or are you going to reject who they are because it's not your choice and you think something's wrong with it? That's not okay to reject your child because they aren't who you want them to be. They are who they are because they were created that way by our Creator, by God. And so God asks us to accept each other unconditionally because He accepts who we are unconditionally, no matter what. We are loved by God. So if He loves us that much, then we have to copy that and love each other in the exact same way. And that is not always easy, but it is a choice. And when you make that choice, that's a freeing situation for you. Because, as a parent and having 3 adult children, I'm not responsible for their choices, but I am responsible for my reaction to them. And I am responsible for giving them love and support anyway, regardless. And just accepting and knowing who they are. The best gift I can give my children is to accept who they know they are. And that's what I want to live out. I want to be that open person. I want to be that loyal person. That's part of my loyalty that I like so much about myself, is that I'm loyal to my children. And no matter what's gone on, I have been loyal to my children. And I will continue to be loving and loyal to my children till I go on to heaven. And, they're human beings too. So, their choices aren't always my choices. That's the way it is. But that doesn't mean that I get to just stomp all over them and be mad because they've made those choices, because I don't. I don't get to do that. I get to be their mom and I get to love them no matter what. And I think that when you know who you are and you accept that part of yourself, then you're more free to be able to do those things and to love others unconditionally, because you realize that you make mistakes too. And so standing in judgment or doing anything else is not where you need to be. You just need to continue to love at just the way you love yourself. And that's a real strong way to know that you've got a good grasp on who you are. Because when you know who you are, very little that anybody says or does is going to rock you. There's a scripture that says, that God shakes things so that all the things fall away. And then He shakes it again, so all the parts that don't need to be there falls away. And then He shakes it for the last time, and the things that won't fall off, they're unshakable. And I'm grateful, because let me tell you, I have been shaken and shaken and shaken. And I can tell you, I'm glad now that I've been shaken. At the time, I wasn't so happy about it. I was pretty miserable about it. And I just kept thinking, God, why do I keep being shaken? And now I know that it's because now what I know about myself is unshakable. And it doesn't make me perfect or with all the wisdom in the world. It just means that I know who I am, and I know that I'm loved by my family, and I know that I'm loved by God. And that's important. So as you're listening to this, please know that when you write those things down like I asked you to, you are going to go on this really awesome journey of self-discovery, and you're going to become stronger and better and understand why putting your body and your soul and your spirit together and doing these healthy things for them, it's going to put you in a place of freedom that you have never known before. That is a great gift that God can give you. What a blessing to know and have freedom to be just who you are and to celebrate that, because then you're more able to celebrate somebody else's joy. There is nothing worse than being constrained and seeing somebody else be happy about something that you're jealous of or you're coveting. And you're just miserable because you wish you were like that. And that comparison game is just no good. And when you know who you are, you don't tend to do that. You tend to just go, I am so happy for them that that has happened. Now, there's still things that I'm working on, and there's still trauma things that I'm dealing with. Like, I've second guessed myself all the time about this podcast. I second guess all the time, whether it's useful or whether I'm any good at it. I second guess stuff like that all the time. I hesitate on doing things. I don't always make the best financial decisions. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't put money in the bank and I don't save and all of that stuff and I just blow money. It's just that, I grew up with very little money, and I grew up with a situation where my mom and my dad were always bickering and fighting about money. And so it taught me that we didn't have any money, but I sure hope that one day I do. And now that we're making, a decent amount of money, I'm still questioning everything I do about money. And though I'm not where I want to be, I am working hard to discover why it's difficult for me to continually every single day make the decisions that are going to that are make me happy in 6 months, so that I'm not completely worried and jumping on myself for not making those decisions for myself. Now, like I said, let me back up for a second. It's not that I make bad decisions. It's not that I don't ever put money back. It's that I'm constantly worried about it. And that's just one more show of another area of trauma that God's trying to shake loose in me. Because when I don't feel like I'm doing well with that, it makes me feel like I'm less than who I am. And that is not a truth. And those are the little negative thoughts that end up going round and round and round in my mind. And so I'm like, Crystal, you are talented. You are intelligent. You have wisdom. You have learned. Just make the decision on how you want to deal with this, and then deal with it that way every single day. And that's part of that loyalty, because part of my loyalty is being loyal to doing well financially. So all of those things work together. This is why it's important to understand the definitions of how you describe yourself and the things that you like about yourself and the person that you want to be. That's why that it's really important that you understand what those words mean, because when you know what they mean, it's much easier to walk out that particular lifestyle and that particular thing that you want to do. And it's much easier to start learning and knowing yourself. And then you're going to end up being true to you, just like Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. And it's going to make it easier for you to be honest with yourself and then honest with others and start walking out the life that you really want to be living rather than the life that you wish that you could live. Okay, I hope that all of this was helpful today. Remember that the podcast drops every single Monday on all your social media, favorite social media and podcast networks. Make sure that you like it and that you follow all of those things and you share it and tag a friend, because all of those things help spread the podcast, and that goes to help other people, because that's our goal, is to help as many people as we possibly can, to not just keep it in the studio, but to spread the joy and the love and the work out to everyone. So we love you all. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, I'm Crystal McDaniel, and this is The Naked Singer.